As I mentioned in lecture, most ML models require labeled data in order to train, and not everyone has a ready supply of labeled data available. There are many different strategies that businesses can use to acquire labeled data, and one of them is to pay human raters to label data for them. In this demonstration, I'll show how you can do that within the AutoML tool in GCP. To navigate to the AutoML tool, click on the navigation menu and scroll down to AutoML Vision. Then click Get Started with AutoML. On this screen, you can see that I have a number of data sets, and I've uploaded these ahead of time. We'll go over how this tool works and how you can create your own data sets in a later lab. For now, what I'd like you to focus on is the fact that in this data set, all of the images are unlabeled. That is, they lack a label. In order to use the human labeling service, you can't expect your human raters to come up with their own labels, so what you have to do first is to supply some of your own. Click the Add Label button to add a label. Once you've finished adding your labels, the next thing you need to do in order to send these images off to be labeled is to provide some examples for each class. To do that, simply click on an image, and you'll see that the labels appear on the right-hand side. If you select one of the circles, you can then click OK. And now you'll notice that in the rows label, there's one image. In order to commission the labeling service, you'll need to repeat this process a number of times to have at least 3 images per class. And ideally, you should make those a representative set. They capture all the different ways that, for instance, a rose could look like. So there are red roses, but also white roses. Once you've done this for each class, you can click on the Request Labeling button. And a dialog will pop up in which you'll be asked to describe the nature of your task to the raters. In this case, classify flower images. For each class, or in this case for each label, you should also provide a description. And then you'll be asked to add some examples. Now these aren't actually daisies, but that's okay. And you'll repeat this a number of times for each class. And when you're finished, you can then set the size of the request. Our recommendation is to start small to make sure that the human raters understand the task well. And then, gradually over time, if they do, you can increase the size of your request. So in my case, I'll set it to a request size of 100, which means that 100 images will be randomly sent to the human raters, and they will provide the ratings for each one. You also have the ability to control how many raters see each image. By default, 3 raters will see each image, which allows you to deal with any kind of inconsistency in your data. And then click Submit Request. The system will take 1 to 5 days to process your request, depending on the size of the request and its complexity. When it finishes, you'll be able to review the human rater's work, and if it meets your standards, approve it to begin training your custom ML model. So I've done this already for this data set, and you can see that there are 78 images awaiting my approval. And that's because just because a rater says that an image has a particular label doesn't mean that it's set in stone that it must be. We can now see for each of these images that need approval how people voted and if there's any disagreement. In this case, you see that 2/3 of the voters, of the labelers, reported this as a daisy, which is in fact a mistake. And the reason it's a mistake is because in this particular task, we didn't allow them to choose sunflower. If you approve of the image, you can click on the Approve button at the bottom. And if you reject, you can click on the Reject button. The interface also breaks down the images by the extent to which there's agreement among the raters. All agreed means that all the raters agreed, and you can select all the images that fit that category and approve all of them at once if you want. You can also review the ones where there's a majority agreement, and where there's a lot of disagreement. Once you've done that, and you've created 100 label images, you can start using the AutoML tool. In a later lab, we'll do just that, and you'll have a custom model.